I'm Barbara Falk, and I will be moderating. I just want to introduce you very quickly to the panel, and then we'll get into the questions. We have Tarrah Godish, who's the Director of Audience Development at NAPCO Media, Mark Rosen, who's the Accounts Director at MPS Media Group, Frank Lama, who's Director of International Accounts at MPS Media Group, Belyus, who's the Associate Publisher at The Nation, and Rick Day, who's the VP of Consumer Marketing at Hearst Magazines. So welcome everybody, thank you for participating. Let's start with question one. How are audience metrics changing while our customers do stay at home and socially distance? And are you seeing web traffic increasing? Anyone can start.
Sure, I'll start. Go ahead, Tarrah.
Oh, okay. Is Caitlin with The Nation? I just wanted to say that we have seen, obviously, web traffic up. One thing to keep in mind for us, or that's in the back of our mind, is that 2020 is an election year and we're a political magazine, so that also is playing into this. But yes, our web traffic has definitely been up based on coronavirus sort of timing of when people started retreating from the physical world. So our traffic's up, but our time on site is down, and our sub conversions have pretty much been flat. So where we're seeing traffic increase, we're not seeing an increase in subscriptions.
I'll start. First of all, thanks for inviting me, MCMA, and secondly, I hope everybody out there is doing well with their families and everybody's healthy and adjusting to this new work environment. At Hearst, yes, also traffic's way up on our websites, and we're seeing that convert into two things. First, subscriptions ordered online are up significantly year over year or post-COVID. And also we're seeing the sites become more and more of a shopping destination. In March, Hearst drove over 1 million product sales through commerce content. And we're seeing April about 3 to 4 times higher than even March again. So more and more, I think customers are coming to the sites as a first step towards product purchases as people obviously order more and more online, what their needs are at home.
This is Tarrah. We're also seeing, we're B2B, so we're also seeing a lot of our web traffic increasing across the brands. What's interesting is that it does depend on the type of content. So I know we'll get into this a little bit later, but as far as what metrics are shifting, we typically see a lot of our topic-focused industry-specific content doing significantly well. And right now it's really about the business management content. And that is where we're seeing not only increased traffic, but also increased engagement as well. I would say the same, that the churn to the file is remaining pretty steady. We're seeing changes in certain areas where content is really valuable for the brand, for the audiences that we serve. And we're seeing increased conversion on certain PDF assets that we're providing that are meant to be resources for them. But for the most part, we are seeing the conversion and retention side be pretty stable as well.
Frank Lama here. We're seeing tremendous growth in 10 to 25% in traffic, and it is actually growing the file. We brought in 36,000 subscriptions across about 20 titles for one of my publishers, just in a 2-week period in the middle of March when the shutdown started to really happen. My titles are in the history, knowledge, crafting. So it gives them something to do. So they're ordering so they can have, it looks like information to have at home, and it's been great. If it wasn't for newsstand and event side of the publishing business, our publishing business, we would be in tremendous shape and we'd be having the best year ever. The other thing we're finding is on our mail side, sorry, going off there real quick, is people are showing up at the mailman. People are going out in my neighborhood here, and we're having an event every day when the post office comes by. So snail mail is having its day as well. So I just want to throw that out there.
Mark, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I don't regularly monitor web traffic for most of our clients, and most of my time is spent in the niche B2B space. So I think a lot of it, is dependent on, the particular market that I'm working with. So we've got some titles in the healthcare field, which are obviously seeing increases. In terms of web traffic, I think a lot of the other titles are basically flat or probably down a little. But again, they're very specialized, so it's hard to really get a read. They're small markets, and it'd be hard to really say how much the change in the environment has affected their business.
Okay, great. We'll go on to the next question. What kinds of messaging are working and what isn't? And has your messaging addressed the pandemic, or are you maintaining message as usual?
This is Tarrah. I'll kick this one off. So for us, across the board, we've made it a goal for all of our publications that we want to remain a resource for the audiences that we serve. And so we want to make sure that our content remains an extension of their support system. So we have addressed the pandemic, but we address it based on the industries that we're serving and how it's we made a point to not just address how it's impacting them, but what are some things they can do about it? And we focus on how they can learn from each other. So we are seeing a lot of messaging working that is focused on being solution-based rather than just covering what is happening. We do still, of course, want to cover how what's happening is impacting each industry and the what there. But for us, what's made a really big impact and has driven a lot of the increases that we're seeing in traffic and conversions in certain areas is where we're focusing on how that impacts our specific industries. And then another part of that is that we're finding that our audience is really still heavily focused on the topics that they always were, but now how it's shifting because of the pandemic. So it's really not just about, for example, one of our brands covers marketing. It's really not just about direct mail and email. They still want to know about those topics, but they also want to know how they need to be shifting their strategies during this time. So, and it's interesting too, because we found different industries are reacting really differently to how direct we are with our pandemic coverage. So for some of our publications, if we are calling it out by name, they want nothing to do with it. They would rather us be really focused on the topics and how they can do things in a changing environment. Whereas some of our other brands, if we're not being direct with them and giving it to them straight, then they don't want anything to do with it. They want to know exactly what the experts that we have on staff and in our contributor base have to say about it.
I'll go next. By and large, we're letting the content drive the traffic. We haven't really changed our messaging along the subscription transaction path, for example, landing pages or email blasts or things like that. So that's all business as usual. As far as trending goes, it's interesting. We're just seeing this week, obviously, up to this point, the COVID type content was really driving traffic. But there seems to be sort of a little bit of waning of that out there. You can see that in Google trending and Twitter trending. And people are at least coming to our sites more and more for DIY projects, recipes, at-home beauty tips, things like that. It seems like people are starting to grow a little disinterested with COVID-based news and content, and looking more towards lifestyle types of things that our sites service.
Yeah, same here. We saw a spike in traffic maybe 2 weeks ago, and we've sort of tapered off. We're still at better levels than we were. But what's interesting, when I said that our traffic was up and our subs were flat, part of the reason that is we're one of those political news publishers who put all of its coronavirus coverage in front of the paywall. So had we not, and actually we have numbers before and after in that tiny span of like maybe a 2-week period when we decided to remove the paywall, at where we were seeing a much bigger increase in conversions, like we fell off a significant 4 to 5, I think even 8 points. So for us, we have had to make up that difference. And what we did was we directly are addressing coronavirus in our marketing content on site now. Though that coronavirus coverage is free, we run slider messaging and whatnot, asking people to pay and to subscribe to support the fact that the coronavirus content is free. Now, the internal discussions, of course, are whether that's sustainable. Clearly, a number of publications, the Miami Herald, even the New York Times, have realized it's not, because we're going to be in this world probably for quite some time. And we don't really know what it's going to look like and how long we can keep doing that. So we're looking at alternatives to just throwing everything in front of the paywall that's tagged as coronavirus. One thing I will mention is that email messaging for us has been strongest in over 2 years for April. And we did use coronavirus messaging specifically. So we've seen an uptick both in traffic, but also in email conversions, which has been really great. Our direct mail also is great, Frank. It's performing wonderfully.
Good to hear.
That's actually one of the questions someone sent in was with the paywalls and if you open them up. So Caitlin, that was great that you addressed that ahead of the question coming up. Did anyone else want to comment or talk about with the question with the messaging and or with the paywalls?
On the messaging side, we've kept it no COVID content mention at all. And if anything, we've gone to, since we know there's more people that are tasting the titles, so we went to, we've been doing a lot of 3 issues for $3 and 3 issues for $5. And that is normally, we have the history of where it was, and it's about 25 to 50, depending on the title, 25 to 50% performing better than it did before COVID and everybody was at home. So that's the interesting things we've been seeing. We haven't really changed our payrolls because it's not really COVID, hard making a paper craft.
Anyone else before we go on to the next question? Okay, next question. What channels have surprised you in good ways or bad ways? Instagram, Facebook, Facebook Live, email, LinkedIn.
I can start on that one. We, B2B titles tend to be a little more old school. We still have some veterinary titles that find facts very productive just because of the nature of the small office sizes and the way they communicate with the outside world. And we haven't really seen any drop off in those kind of communications and those kind of returns. Just based on this time of the year, we've got some audited titles, coming up on the June audit cycles for BPA and AAM, and we haven't really seen any kind of drop off in email. And in fact, with telemarketing and the campaigns that we've kept going, people seem to be reachable if they're still employed. One exception to that, we have two titles to the nursing market. And the healthcare market, predominantly hospital-based people, and those we just really shut down out of a courtesy in the sense that we just can't tie up these people with phone calls at this time. But other than that, our channels have maintained well.
Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I can comment to this one a little bit. So I don't know that any have surprised us significantly in comparison to how we've been seeing things perform previously. The one thing that we are seeing a decent bump in is live and virtual events such as this. So we have quite a few webinars that are receiving sometimes double or triple the amount of registrants that we would normally see to those. We have been testing Facebook Live in a couple of areas and those have performed well. So the live and virtual event space is definitely a spot that we'll continue to push forward with because it is what people are looking for from in our audience base right now. So.
And
Yeah,
I would, oh, go ahead, Caitlin.
I was just going to say, to Tarrah's point, one of our big revenue channels is this travel department. So we clearly lost all that revenue. We paused all trips that are going. We also have a cruise, a fundraising cruise we do, and that's paused. So we were also trying to come up with alternative ways to make up that revenue. And we've gone to weekly Zoom seminars with prominent activists, writers, whatnot. We charge $10. We sell packages and then we charge $10 a pop. And we were shocked by the amount of people who were interested in that. And so that was pretty surprising that people want to spend an hour with, just right now, it just ended, Bill McKibben talking about the climate change. I mean, he's a bigger draw, but I think people are bored, and as long as they're willing to pay us while they're bored, I'll take it.
Right.
What I was going to say is my expire reactivation and my cross promotions via titles, usually on email, you know, a 0.75% response is great. I'm seeing over 1%. So for a 3 or 4 effort thing, I'm seeing 4 or 5% net response on email, which is unheard of normally, at least for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. You just reminded, we were also seeing increases in our on-site modal offers that are either for an event or from an app for an asset. And we typically would see around 2 to 3%. And for certain things, we're seeing between 5 and 6 right now. So.
Rick, did you want to comment on?
My comment, I mean, channel-based is, I find it kind of ironic as newsstand, where, and maybe we'll get to newsstand later, but if we're talking about channels, I think it's interesting that newsstand, we always thought long-term would be kind of the strengths of newsstand that would continue would be bookstores and airports. And that whole model has been completely flipped around now. The new based activity where newsstand, airports and bookstores are virtually selling 0 copies. Meanwhile, grocery stores and drugstores have held up fairly well as far as traffic patterns and sales goes, and are pretty close to their pre-COVID trending. So while newsstand overall is very challenged, it's just interesting which classes of trade you know are continuing to contribute, and which ones are obviously selling are very challenged.
Right. The next question is, how are you planning for the rest of the year when we don't know when things are going to return to normal? And will you be forecasting reduced response rates?
I'm not forecasting reduced response rates. If anything, I actually have several publishers that are we're pushing email, and we're pushing actually direct mail. Took our budget number, threw it out the window, and we're maxing out and rolling the dice. So my publishers are very excited and think this is the subside will be good with them and on all avenues, whether it's web or snail mail.
Yeah, I'll say that we're going into a reforecast, and right now the plan is to hold as is. That's my plan. We're lucky again that we're in an election year, so we were already expecting a bump from that because of the politicization of coronavirus. That's just helping us in some ways. But I am concerned about a potential recession. And so what I think might happen, and what we'll be watching closely, is a bump in new business orders and a fall off in those renewal orders that were always at a higher price. So that's what I think is what I anticipate will happen, is that our churn will go up. So we'll take a look at that and watch it going in, but we may reforecast our renewals down a couple of points and our new business up.
I think we're similar to what Frank and Caitlin are saying, which is we're staying the course with offline direct mail. We might see a little bit of slower response, but I think it's encouraging that all publishers are continuing to invest in that as a sub-acquisition source. I think it's pretty easy to sort of take a short-term look and try to pull back on some of that expense. So it's good to hear that folks are sticking with it. And we are increasing our investment with search and social and paid social because of those rising metrics we're seeing now with all the increased traffic. So that's sort of what we're doing is investing more in social, but staying the course in offline direct mail.
So for us on the B2B side, we are seeing a bit of a different trend. So our focus right now is being as proactive as we can be, considering that a lot of our audiences either are not at their offices right now, they're at home, and because of some of the industries we serve, you know, to Caitlin's point, with a potential recession, you know, we do expect to see some turns to the file that will just be due to people being furloughed, people being laid off, things unfortunately of that nature. So we are being as proactive as we can. We want to be prepared for the worst so that we can be in the best position possible as we get through this. So that does mean being really focused on cost saving measures, such as, you know, pulling back on areas where we're not seeing as much of a return as we would, and making sure that we are prepared to hit the ground running when things do start to take a shift and we see some sense of normalcy, whatever that ends up being. So on the B2B side, definitely a little bit different because our audiences are not all of them are at work right now. So.
Okay, great. So on to the next question. So with working from home, are you working more or less hours? And how are you and your team adjusting? Has it been a smooth transition, a hard transition? How's the productivity? You know, how has this impacted you and your teams?
Well, I'd say, I mean, for MPS, and Frank can join us, you know, we're very remote. A lot of people are remote to begin with, so this isn't a huge change for us. You know, we miss seeing people on a daily basis, but I think overall, for us, it's not been a really significant change. I think most people are probably working the same number of hours, and they may be working slightly different hours, you know, depending on your family situation and all, but you know, the work gets done. So I don't think anybody's too concerned about whether it's 7 a.m. or 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and so I'll jump on since Mark is my compatriot. Yes, productivity has actually gone up. I actually have a better focus on my team now because we touch in we were doing it every day, and we started out at a half an hour. Then we got it down to about 15 minutes. Now we do it about 2 or 3 times a week. So we all know what's going on. I have a pretty good handle on every day what they're doing. And then if anybody messes up their day, it's me or the publisher. But other than that, we really, they're working earlier. They're working more to my schedule now because I usually start at 5 o'clock in the morning since my publishers are in the UK and they're 5 hours ahead. So my team is now, so they don't have to deal with as many emails. They're starting at 8 o'clock as opposed to getting in their car and driving in at 8 o'clock. They're able to deal with me at 8 o'clock. And then I actually still see emails from them at 5:30. And I know that what they were doing at 2:30. So I know they didn't knock off for 2 hours. So if anything, like Mark said, it's really been no change. If anything, more productive. And I enjoy it because it's 2 hours less out of my day when I did go to the office and bother Mark.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say, I think for us it was a struggle. We're not a work from home office, and we were never set up to be. So when we decided, whatever, mid-March to go to work from home, it required a lot of massaging, and kudos to our head of IT who really got that off the ground quite quickly and turned it around. I mean, we had people who didn't even have workstations that they could use at home. So now I think we've adjusted. I think people are working about the same hours. There have been one or two major cross-company projects that have been tabled during the work from home period, because I think the in-office communication was better for moving those projects forward, particularly projects that required 10 or 12 hands. They just seem to have been better communicated in a physical space than in a digital one.
I would say at Hearst, our productivity and hours are about the same. A lot of us had large commutes, so that's actually been almost a somewhat improvement in quality of life in many ways. And I think Hearst has done a good job sort of communicating to the corporation what's going on and keeping everybody sort of reassured. The CEO of the company has like a weekly all hands meeting. It's a Zoom call. He answers questions that people have been sending him during the week, sort of knowing, you know, when do you think we're going to get back? What's going on? Various questions. And I think they've done a great job just sort of connecting with the employees. And also, corporate made a commitment to not have any layoffs or salary cuts until things get back to normal. So I think that's been very reassuring for the company. And so morale's been pretty good, which hand in hand leads to productivity. So, so far pretty smooth. A very tough situation, but the company and all the individuals in the company have done a great job banding together and keeping things going.
Yeah, so at NAPCO, I think I would say some similar comments about our head of IT did a phenomenal job of making sure everyone got up to speed pretty quickly. We did already have a lot of people that worked from home, and we had a lot of flexibility to be able to work from home as needed. So most employees were already comfortable with doing so, which was a huge help. We have a lot of tools at our disposal that allow for quick and easy communication with each other. We use Microsoft Teams, which is phenomenal for quickly setting up meetings. We have all adjusted pretty quickly to doing video calls with each other, which of course helps actually being able to see each other. I think for us too, as far as the productivity side goes, I think it's overall pretty much the same. I think we are definitely seeing some pockets where people are going in and out of being in overdrive due to what's currently happening. And there's a lot of, strategic changes that people are having to make. But the awesome thing that we're seeing is, I think a lot of our departments are banding together more than we have before. We're seeing a lot of camaraderie between departments. We're seeing little virtual happy hours popping up here and there to keep morale up, which is awesome. NAPCO Media is a company that is really, really focused on employees and is really focused on keeping the culture positive and keeping everyone engaged with each other. So there's been a lot of transparency, which has certainly helped people feel more comfortable going through this, knowing exactly what the higher ups are thinking and what we think our path forward is. And we have regular emails each week from our HR department with some updates on things that are changing, as well as some motivational tips that we can be doing. So I think for the most part, morale is definitely stable, and, productivity I think is too for the most part.
Okay, great. What is your company doing to stay engaged with your subscribers? And also, what are they doing? And you touched upon some of this, but is there anything else as far as staying engaged with your fellow employees?
So as far as our subscribers, some of the things that I mentioned already, we are doing more virtual events. We're doing some peer groups here and there, depending on certain brands. And we've also done some more surveying that is more based on readership surveys rather than an extensive one. We've been trying to keep in touch with not just the audience behavior that we're seeing on site and in our newsletter, open rates and things like that, but also, trying to hear directly from them about what they need so that we're able to continue serving them. And then as far as staying engaged with the company, like I said, virtual happy hours on certain teams here and there. We're having regular emails. One thing I didn't mention before is we're doing every week we have a theme where we can send in a picture to see people. So for example, one week it was, if you would like to send in a picture of your pet, you can do that. And then a nice little video goes out. And it has actually been something that people are really loving because you get to see everyone. You get to see people that maybe are always out of office that you didn't even see when you were in office. And it's allowing people to, again, get a good laugh, share some things with each other that maybe we wouldn't normally talk about, so that you're still getting a little bit of that social aspect as well.
Good idea.
Yeah, that is a very good idea. Are you making any changes to rate base, moving anything that's print to digital, advancing that? I think it was BMP. Now they've moved a bunch of their publications over to digital. I think really pushed it forward because of this. They had planned to do it, but I think later in the year. And are you looking to reduce your print runs?
I don't have any publishers reducing their print runs. We've had one title cancel their May issue, and they just went all digital, citing the virus as a reason. We've also seen some publishers, sending out more communications about, updating your address if you want, because you're going to be, furloughed, or you're going to be working from somewhere else for any given amount of time. So, things that are standard that you might find, just on your, buried on your web page somewhere on how to update a subscription or account management, but making it more forthcoming and making it easier for subscribers to take advantage of those kind of things.
Hearst is in a multi-year, been in a multi-year plan to reduce rate bases. It began in 2018 with rate base reductions, continued in 19, and then this year as well. What's different is usually different due to COVID, is usually we'll just do one rate base reduction at the beginning of the year that gets announced in the fall. But since print advertising was relatively hit hard in the last couple of months, we accelerated rate base reductions and actually did some mid-year rate base reductions on about 18 of our 25 titles, effective with July 1. So that's sort of an acceleration of a plan that was already in place, but that was prompted by some of the revenue streams being changed so much this year. And like Mark mentioned, we've had several titles that have cut an issue in this late second quarter or early third quarter. And basically those will be permanent frequency reductions for those titles as well.
I want to go back to the customer, talking with the customer. What we started to do is we've been putting inserts on the magazines, because actually all my titles are freighted over to the US. So we just want to be alert that with all the disruptions, there might be a disruption on when they actually receive their issue, because especially on the craft titles, they know it comes the third Tuesday of the month, and if it's not there, they're calling customer service, they're emailing, and they're looking for their another copy. So we've been using that to let them know about that, but at the same time, most of my titles are in the 35 to 50% range of email addresses. We figured it's a great time to harvest additional email addresses, so then we can alert them quicker if they gave us their email address. So we've started that, and we're seeing a very good response on that. I don't have how much yet, but it was just another way to, since we were doing the communication, and we put it, in editorial letters, on the website, and now inserts on their issues they're receiving. So we're using all those things to have people contact us to update, like Mark was saying, their addresses, but also get their email addresses. So if we did decide to go digital or had to, we can at least serve them something. And we've been using it where we'll serve you a digital issue, but we won't take that away from when we can get you the print. So if you had 12 issues left, you'd still get 12 issues, but we still want to take care of you because you're a valued customer. So we'll send you a digital in case, that time frame is going to be more than your usual receipt of that next issue.
I think actually relates to one of the questions that we have. So thank you, because that's sort of a good connection. And so for the other panelists, if you could, feel free to respond. But has this time offered the opportunity to create new audiences, new audience facing products and things you've never done before? I mean, Frank, you addressed this with an opportunity to get more email addresses so that you can have a quicker way to communicate. But are any of you doing any other types of sort of new initiatives, or maybe things that you were thinking about and this just sort of through.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, we've had on our sort of roadmap an increase to store products that we sell at shop.thenation.com. And we obviously have been revisiting sort of the products that we want to sell in there. It doesn't make sense at this point to sell masks or hand sanitizers or whatever. We don't know, or we haven't made a decision yet. I think for us, what was very hopeful was seeing, again, we're in an election year and we don't really know what's going to happen with physical elections, but the turnout in Wisconsin was really impressive. And looking at all the signs on people's backs was very telling. So we've been playing in that space with the feeling that we're going to be in a COVID environment for quite some time. And what are the products people need now that also aren't really taking advantage of a painful moment, but rather helping people through that painful moment. So that will be coming, I think, more quickly than we had anticipated.
Okay, any audit issues? You know, for instance, BPA has now revised the rules for paragraph 3B. I don't know, the publications that I work on are not audited, so I'm not as up to date with the auditing rules and auditing issues, but has there been any new AAM rules that you're taking advantage of?
Yeah, they both audit bureaus have been very, I think very responsive to what's happening and have been quick to act in terms of rule changes. We're going to have to confer with the publishers as it gets closer to filing time on, which ones that we're going to take advantage of. But I'm sure a lot of titles will be, using some of those, changes to modify their brand reports and statements.
Yeah, my understanding is AAM is relaxing some of the rules that would previously disqualify some circulation based on timing, such as say 3 in the mail or something, some of those rules, and which, of course is reacting well to the environment because we can't control delivery all that well. We're not going to consciously change what we do, but I think that's just nice that we can count on the rules being less strict given some of the variables that are in place here.
Right. What about the waiting room copies, the newsstand retail? I know we touched upon, with the newsstand and what you're seeing as far as, with the airports and those types of retailers versus that the sales like at supermarkets are holding. But what about like the waiting room copies, or if there are any other comments about newsstand or retail copies? Have you put anything on hold or reduced your distribution?
Well, for my titles, they were pretty much, since they're all imports, pretty much Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. So we're pretty much suspended newsstand until we're just starting to talk about September, October issues that would start to show up in August. And some of the publishers are thinking to do a scaled back just in case. And we MPS keeps in contact with Barnes & Noble daily, and they're hoping that things are going to change, but still, nobody wants to say anything definite. It's really up to it's going to be a governor by governor, and it looks like the tri-state area at least is going to be on the long end before things open up, like news bookstores.
Yeah, we've reduced print orders on newsstand again for airports and bookstores. And then with waiting room copies, we've simply pulled back anything that was previously going to doctor's offices as a public place copy. We just stopped sending those copies and shifted to other places. So.
Okay. Todd, I don't see any other questions through Facebook. Did any other questions come in, say through chat?
No, you're seeing them all.
I'll circle back to the question about what we're doing to engage with subscribers.
Oh,
I think
sure.
something that's interesting that Men's Health and Women's Health did, that's sort of a sign of the times, is they've had readers sign up for virtual walks or runs. So you could sign up for a 1K or 5K walk or run, and you log your time and you chat online. And so they've set up all the infrastructure for people to sort of do walks or workouts virtually and then connect with a community of like-minded runners or walkers. And also, I think there's in some cases, there's a charitable element to it as well. So I think that's a good reaction by those specific magazines, the health-based magazines, to keep people going and keep readers connected.
Yeah, does anybody else want to go back to any of the questions that we had? Anything that you've thought about since I asked them? Any other comments that you have that you wanted to make that you think would be valuable to our audience?
I don't have something I want to go back to, but I do have a question to everybody else. And I'm curious to know, given the current state of everything, if that's changed your relationships or how you're strategizing around Amazon as a partner, or some of the other digital platforms, but particularly Amazon. I'm just curious, as a little publisher, if you're just going to hold steady on your relationships or you're pulling back, moving forward.
I think largely we're staying steady. I know on the e-commerce side, there's been a lot of thought put into making sure that e-commerce connects to more than, just obviously the one big retail, one big deliverer there. So working hard with Etsy and Walmart and other e-commerce players for those content things that drive affiliate sales. I think, yeah, that's the main point.
Cool. Thanks, Rick.
Frank, did you want to say anything or?
No, I mean, if anything, we've gotten away from, my publishers were small players, but they've kind of backed off over the past year of Amazon, just because I don't know why they just started to sour. Yeah. I mean, just because they become, I don't know, it's Amazon. So. But yeah, no. The one thing I did want to mention is, and you're always stealing from yourself if you do this, but I happen to have two, I think I was mentioned before we started, two advanced renewals, one that happened in February and one that was going on right now. And they have, so if a publisher needed some cash up front, knowing that it's going to be taken from tomorrow, I had two that, one is over 16% at the moment, and one is over 10% just 1 week in the mail. And that was with also some 3 email efforts. And both are over 100,000, with no discount and no premium. What we did is I was able to tie one around 100th issue and one around anniversary, 20th anniversary. So if publishers need some influx, especially smaller publishers who might need that cash just to get them through because they don't have that newsstand or they don't have that event coming in, this could be a way to at least, but know that you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. So, you're going to see that 6 months or 9 months down the road, those renewals are not coming in because you got them already. So, but just something to mention.
Yeah, I'm actually something like that, but going to expires, the last 2 years of expires, and instead of pulling them in for direct mail, which we ordinarily do, sending them out like a win back type of renewal offer to bring some orders and cash in. Not that we're not impacted really by newsstand because we don't really have the newsstand copies, but just in general, just to sort of help things, push things along. And so I think that will generate a good response as well. So I think we can wrap this up. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the 5 of you participating in this and being so well prepared for this. And good luck with everything, and be well and be safe.
You too.